Okay. Good morning, everybody. Can you hear me? Do you see me? Is everything okay? Okay.
Yes.
So, I think we are in time. I'm very glad and I'm pleased to be the moderator of this session this morning. And I would like to first ask Zsuzsanna Hanna Bíró Zsuzsa, if she's here. Is she here? I don't really see the person.
Today she's ill, so she cannot join. Barbara Suromi is going to.
So she's going to replace her. Okay, yes. Nice replacement. Great. So, well, I'm equally happy to have Barbara here. You know about Zsuzsa that she's the spiritual mother of this project, and she's the, let's say, professional coordinator. And if I can put it this way, Barbara Suromi is a very old colleague of mine, friend of mine, and also the person who is absolutely familiar with all small details of this project of implementation, and she was present from the very beginning. So please, Barbara, tell us about the project and sum up the developments.
Thank you, Peter, for the very kind words. It is not going to be me who is talking, but I'm going to read Zsuzsa's opening thoughts for today, and I would like to extend her greetings to the participants. She is unfortunately away for the week, and this way she can participate. So let me read you her thoughts. It is a great honor to welcome you on behalf of the Inclusion for School projects. First of all, I would like to welcome our invited guests who will be active participants in our program over the next few hours, members of the Inclusion for Schools Project Consortium for Albania, Bulgaria, Hungary, Slovakia, the leaders of the Pioneered and Smooth projects from Luxembourg, Greece, or any other country of their partners which are running in parallel with us and are conducting research on the same topic. Representatives of projects, whether previously running with the Horizon 2020 program or funded from other sources, which are conducting research and development to combat social disadvantage. Of course, I also welcome those who have not yet been involved in similar projects but are interested in EU-funded projects and might in the future be interested in developing joint programs. The Inclusion for Schools project is a coordination and support action project, whose main aim is to create synergies between old and new projects within and outside EU. One way to do this is to invite to our public events anyone who is researching, developing of, or just reporting on good practices or otherwise influencing the processes in public education. In the 38 months ahead, we will try to use a wide range of tools to create synergies from awareness raising and opinion forming community events to media coverage and organizing professional forums, workshops and conferences. We are still in the process of formulating our central messages. We can already identify the problems that can have a negative impact on any action to improve the situation, such as the centuries-old practice of social exclusion, the decline in solidarity, the increase in social inequalities in recent years, and the fossilization of stereotypical thinking in certain social groups and cultures. There are also problems that need to be addressed if we are to support professionals working to tackle social inequalities. Today we have just one taster of all this. This is the first time that we are presenting the programs of the 3 Horizon 2020 projects to the general public that have been funded under the program Enhancing Access and Uptake of Education to Reverse Inequalities. The 2 research and innovation action projects were launched in March this year and will run for 3 years. Inclusion for Schools, which coordinates and supports these projects too, started last November and will run for 4 years. Before presenting the projects, 2 prominent Hungarian researchers will talk about the results of their own research, which is closely related to our topic, but funded by the Hungarian National Fund for Scientific Research rather than the European Council. After the lunch break, you are invited to a roundtable discussion based on 2 short films. The animated short film is a powerful tool for shaping public opinion. We would like Okay, yes, it usually happens with a lot of people. So I continue. We would like to discuss its potential with our invited guests from the 3 Horizon 2020 projects. In addition to the short film produced by the Rosa Parks Foundation, we will also show our own 3-minute short film, which should express the main message of the Inclusion for Schools project, which focuses not on inclusion within the school, but on the involvement of the school in the life of the community and vice versa, on the involvement of the community in the life of the school. That is the real meaning of our short name, Inclusion for Schools. The final stage of our program today will be a professional discussion that will raise recurring problems and issues of projects like ours and encourage collective thinking and problem solving. This is perhaps the best opportunity today for networking and sharing experiences. Whatever program you take part in today, I hope that you will find it both professionally and personally rewarding, and that you will continue to enjoy attending our events in the years to come. I wish you all a useful and enjoyable day of constructive discussion. That was her message. Thank you.
Peter, please turn on your micro.
Sorry. So thank you, Barbara, and thank you, Zsuzsa. I hope. Are we recording this session? Sure, we are.
We're not yet recording it.
Yes, I am recording it.
Okay, great. Thanks. So I hope she will. One day she will recover, and she will be able to listen to it and watch this record. And now it is my pleasure to invite Gábor Zubko, who is the head of EU Representative Office, to address our meeting today. Please, Gábor, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Where are you?
Okay. I'm here. So the light conditions are not perfect, but I would like to thank you for this opportunity to address this meeting. In fact, according to original plan, we would be in the House of the European Union at Millenáris in Budapest, because originally we planned it as a physical meeting, and there I would be the host and would greet you in our public space, because the House of the European Union not only hosts the representation of the European Commission to Hungary and the Parliament, so he has an office, but has a public space for events, seminars, cultural events, and such kind of meetings and discussions, which deal with some European policies and European issues. And those occasions are advantageous for me also, because it would be a big mistake from me to speak about the subject of this meeting ahead of the experts of this field, it's a great opportunity for me to learn about this subject, why it is so important, and how important research and projects you are managing related to this call, which called Enhancing Access and Uptake of Education to Reverse Inequalities. And I have learned that the real and big challenge is to reverse the rise of inequalities and to enhance upward social mobility by improving access and uptake to education in Europe. I learned how important this for the individual to fully use and have the opportunity to build on his or her abilities, potential, and talent, and how important for the society and economy to build on these talents and abilities and fully give the opportunity for them through enhancing access and uptake of education. So thank you for this opportunity to learn about the field of your activity, research, and projects. And I would like to offer for the next meeting, if conditions allow, to host you physically in the House of the European Union in Budapest and meet you. And I would like to wish a lot of success to this important project and the successful meeting, good discussions, lively discussions for today. Thank you very much.
Peter, the micro.
Yeah, okay. It works. Thank you, Gábor, for this excellent introduction. And now we can go on with keynote speeches. And this is the right moment to ask Mr. Dr. Professor Pap Z. Attila Z. Pap. Probably this is the right English order. Who is an outstanding Hungarian sociologist, expert in minority issues, Roma issues, who has published about migration and many other things. I think it would be very long to list all his activities, academic activities, but he's an outstanding sociologist. I'm really pleased to give him the floor now. So Attila, the floor is yours.
Hello everyone, can you hear me? I will try to share my screen to see my presentation. Do you see my presentation now?
No,
not
yet.
No.
But be patient.
Now?
I'm trying to help from the other side.
No.
So do you see or not?
No.
What can we do now?
You have to share screen.
Yes, I push this.
Then you have to choose from the windows.
One of the applications. You have on the right Windows with the different applications, and you have to choose one.
Oh.
You can also send us your presentation and then we will show you.
Margit, I will allow me please share my screen. I will share the screen, and you will be able to see what is on the screen.
Sorry, just a moment. I leave the meeting and I enter again. Okay.
All right, we will wait for you.
Let's make a try with my presentation.
Okay, let's try again.
Okay.
Now?
Yes, now it works. We can see it.
Okay. Thank you very much for inviting me. And okay. I will try to share with you some idea concerning the educational and institutional resilience, mainly in Hungary, but I think that some of our results can be generalized, at least in Central European region. Me and Esther, we will present some results of one of our closing research, and the name of the research is The School is Not an Island. And during this research, we tried to identify some level of resilience, and we think that we can have a different interpretation of this school resilience. At one level could be the so-called pedagogic level, which means that we can put the question, what makes effective teaching? And as a second level, we can put again another question, another big question, what makes resilient schools, which means that we try to know that how do schools cope with different uncertainty in the public sector. And I think this is a very important question in Hungary today. And also we try to interpret the school resilience in terms of community research, which means that we can put the question again, that what makes resilient communities. In other words, we can say that to understanding the school success, it's very important to have some idea about the relationship between the school and social environment around the school. So in our research, it was a question, how do settlements navigate in the context of the retrenchment of the welfare states, and what are the resources which can mobilize in successful coping strategies. In our research, and as I mentioned earlier, I think that some of our research is relevant not only in Hungary but in other countries as well. But to understand the Hungarian context, it is important to, let's say, repeat some basic information concerning the school effectiveness and the social and ethnic disadvantaged situation in Hungary. According to different domestic and international research, like the famous PISA testing. We know that in Hungary there is a very big gap between the highest and the lowest achieving students in Hungary. Also, we know that the elementary schools are especially ineffective in developing the competences of children raised in disadvantaged families. And also in Hungary, the low performance of Roma students are mainly due to their educational segregation on the one hand, and also, as we know from the international perspective, that in Hungary, the role of the socio-economic background of the students is has a huge impact on school effectiveness, and also we know that in Hungary that the differences between the socio-economics background of students is much more important than the students, let's say, at ethnicity, which is interesting that which is important that very often in public discourse we know that the Roma question is strongly related to the disadvantaged situation, and very often the ethnic background is putting in the front line. So there are a lot of elements in public discourse which try to interpret the education situation of Roma children based only on their ethnicity, which is according to our research results is not true, because the socioeconomic background override this ethnic background. We also can say that the variation in students' educational trajectories are due to some structural causes, which again in Hungary, in today's Hungary, are further enhanced by the school's internal selection mechanisms. And also it's very interesting that in some cases these structural causes very often are accounted for external social pressures in the school discourse. Let's go back to the problematic of resilience. How can we discuss this concept of resilience in our case? The community resilience can be interpreted as a self-organization of groups of people into organization classes, ethnic groups, communities, which helps them to preserve their well-being and cope with environmental challenges. Also, we can say that although individuals need a certain amount of internal psychological strength to overcome obstacles, it is also important to focus at the institutional level or social sources of resilience. There are some studies concerning the educational resilience in multicultural environment, and I think this is important in our case that in some research is emphasizing the importance of certain environmental factors such as the institutional contact between schools and families, and other less formal relationships and different community programs. Also, in our research, it was important that, according to Master and some other researchers, there are three main local characteristics which have a strong impact on the development of resilient children. One of these factors is the availability of social organizations, and also another factor is the consistent expression of social norms, and also the third way we can say that if the children has the opportunity to participate in the life of the community members, very often can contribute to their resilience or to their school factors. In my second part of presentation, I will try to present some quantitative based results, and during our research we tried to grasp this let's say school resilience, and it was a great opportunity to use the so-called national assessment on basic competencies, which is, I think, it's a very important tool in Hungarian educational research. And also, it is important to use this type of database because in the school-level database of this national assessment on basic competencies, there is a so-called ethnic variable, which is interesting that in Hungary there is a so-called fear from ethnic data, which is not the case in Slovakia, for example, or in other countries, in Romania as well. But in our case, this national assessment has a so-called ethnic variable. So in understanding and interpreting the school success of students in general and Roma students as well, we can use this ethnic variable as well. Our aim was to identify different type of schools, and we used the so-called OECD PISA methodology, and we could identify four types of successful schools. One is the so-called relative successful, or let's say resilient schools, which has a positive added value. Also, which we have the so-called ordinary schools, and also we could identify some schools at risk, and using absolutely, let's say, motamo, the OECD PISA methodology, we can identify the so-called absolute resilience schools. In this quantitative point of view, resilience, it means that a school could be interpreted as being resilience if the competency level is in the fourth quartile. Meantime, the so-called socioeconomic index or socioeconomic situation of the students in the school is in the bottom quartile of the country. So using this methodology, we can make some quantitative analysis, and I think that here it is important to know something about what kind of factors are pushing the ordinary schools to mention resilience by using different multivariate statistical models. So we can answer the question, what are the main differences between the ordinary schools and quantitative way identified resilience schools, and we can include in our model different factors. Some factors are related to students, and some factors are related to the school climate, and also there are variables or factors which can be related to the settlement characteristics. And let's see now what are the what can we say using this type of methodological framework about the school resilience in Hungary. At the student-related factors, we can observe that despite of that the whole resilience discourse in this case is in the first quarter of the socioeconomic situation, the social background still have an impact, which means that the socioeconomic background of the school, of the students, is a very important factor which can explain the social disadvantage level. But it's important that this level, that the rate of Roma students doesn't matter. So it means that we can find resilient school indifferent of the rate of Roma students. At the level of school climate, I think there are two main results which could have very important pedagogic consequences. One is that the discipline is an advantage for being a school successful, but interestingly, the motivation has not necessarily positive effect on resilience. And also at the settlements level, we can observe that the likelihood of a school to be resilient is significantly lower in urban settlements than in villages. What is interesting that we know that in Hungary, the majority of disadvantaged students are involved in rural area, but interestingly, the likelihood of school resilience is lower in urban settlements than in a rural area. And also interesting that regionally speaking, the schools around Budapest seems to have a greater possibility to become resilient, which is again, it is interesting that in regions where the rate of Roma students or the Roma population is higher, we hardly can find resilient schools. And also the school resilience can be grasped in settlements where there is no possibility for parents to choose school for their children. In other way, we can say that resilience in some ways a constrained resilience, because the parents has no possibility to choose between different schools. And according to Hungarian data, the school resilience can be grasped in mainly in settlements where there is only one school. So the school choice and resilience in Hungary are not strong related to each other. And also, according to our data, we can say that the school, the medium school has bigger chance to be resilient. In other way, we can say the school size has a positive effect. And from a multicultural or multi-ethnic view, it is interesting that ethnic diversity at teaching staff level would increase the chance of success, which means that the ethnic diversity, let's say the latent tolerance or latent multiculturalism in Hungarian schools would increase the chance of school success. And also from our point of view, it was interesting that the formal ways has no positive effect. Meantime, informal ways of evaluation are significantly important in successful schools. And finally, I think that in Hungary, we know that there is let's say, interesting type of school, the so-called nationality schools or nationality education, nemzetiségi oktatás in Hungarian. So, according to this national assessment data, we could demonstrate that the so-called gypsy school programs has no positive effect to the school success. I think this element could have a lot of implication of the educational policy level. We can put the question, what is the role of the gypsy school programs? What are the competencies providing this type of school programs. And also it's interesting that external control of teacher done by colleagues or authorities suggest a kind of positive effect. So I think that according to our data, finally, I can mention some challenges. As I said, that in areas where there is a high student ratio, the likelihood of resilience is quite low. And also the possibility to find resilient schools with high Roma students is quite difficult. And it's not only a problem for us, for researcher, but also I think that the school resilience, the school success, and the Roma educational problem is still a very big problem in Hungary. And finally, again, I think that the national and official educational developments in Hungary has no real effect on resilience, on school success in Hungary. And we know from the OECD PISA results that school success, the competency level of Hungarian schools tend to be lower in the last period of time. So thank you for your attention, and I think my presentation can be interpreted as being providing some input to your later discussion, and I think it would be also important to here my colleague Esther Neumann, because in the framework of this research, she will present you some results based on the qualitative aspects of this school resilience, school success. Thank you again.
Okay, thank you very much, Attila, for this excellent and provoking presentation. Obviously, there are many questions can be asked, but in general, your conclusions are really, I would say, provoking and interesting. And I'd like to, I would have some questions, but let's first listen to your colleague, Esther Naumann's presentation, because she's going to answer some of the related questions, and later on, after this presentation, we can have a discussion and raise some questions. So Esther is a sociologist, educational anthropologist, and her field of research is educational sociology and ethnography. So Esther, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Can you confirm that you see my presentation on full screen?
Sure.
Good.
Yeah.
So thank you very much. So I will basically continue on Attila's presentation and focus on what the qualitative part of our study taught us about institutional and student resilience in disadvantaged rural village school, in the context of disadvantaged rural schools in Hungary. So in the next 20 minutes, I will briefly talk about the qualitative aspects of our projects, and then I will move on to explore what we found and learned about school and community relations, and specifically about the possible resources and constraints of resilience emerging from the local embeddedness of schools. And then I will move on to discuss how schools perceive Roma students and approach their education, and what we learned from the resilience stories, the stories of Roma resilience they told us, and the individual trajectories of resilient Roma students. And in the final part of my presentation, I will try to expand the notion of resilience based on the qualitative study, and also give some input to what could be used from our project or research project in school development. So in our research project, we worked in 8 local communities in 8 schools. We sampled 4 resilient schools, and we chose a control school for each school in each micro region, which has similar characteristics, but less outstanding results in terms of educational output. And we sampled 4 ghetto schools, meaning 50+% of Gypsy, of Roma intake, and 4 ghettoizing or mixed, socially mixed schools with 30 to 50% intake. And as you see, we went to regions of Hungary where the share of the Roma community is relatively high. In the project, we were interested in what is determined by the broader structures, and where is the agency of schools to enhance or support the social mobility of Roma students. And within this broad question, we were interested in how schools contribute to community and individual mobility in multi-ethnic localities, how schools navigate within the local struggles and the local hierarchies and symbolic struggles for symbolic resources, whether schools can challenge and subvert local social hierarchies, and what could be the successful school strategies to mitigate ethnic conflicts and enhance social mobility. And ultimately, what are the possible resources for resilience for schools in disadvantaged rural context? When we went to schools, almost in many cases, what teachers told us that they fear that that all the weights of social problems and social injustices are placed on the schools, and they are expected to provide resolution and for all these problems. And obviously, this is not what schools can possibly do. And I think this is a very important thing to take into to think about, to understand the structural constraints within these schools are operating. So in the Hungarian context, there are those macro structural changes, the demographic decline, the population and the depopulation of rural schools, the out-migration from rural areas of working parents and educated people, and the ghettoization of rural regions. So in the right, you see a table that shows that in the last 10 years, the share of ghetto primary schools have gradually raised in Hungary, and at the same time, the share of ghettoizing schools have decreased. But the reason for this is that more and more ghettoizing schools are now considered as ghetto schools. There are also systemic challenges within the education system, the teacher shortage, the aging teaching staff, and the threat of burnout. Regional inequalities are strongly impacting schools, especially the white fight from village schools, which is considerably enhanced in the Hungarian context by the expansion of denominational school system and the schools also the school centralization is an important context. So earlier schools were run by local municipalities, but since 2013 they had been centralized, which means the disintegration and isolation of local institutions from the local context, from the local municipality and the local elites. So all in all, these schools are, what we saw that when we went to the school, that these schools are in transition, and often teachers narrate this transition as a decline within the school history, and they have a strong nostalgia for earlier times when they were working with a different student composition as well. So in many cases, what we found is that schools are reproducing the local social hierarchies and the boundaries between minority and majority communities. And this was actually especially the case in schools which operated streaming systems. So they, in seeking the preference of majority parents, introduced streaming, introduced specialist streams from the age of 6. And this resulted in ethnic polarization between classes. And as the literature suggests, we encountered disaffection and the emergence of anti-school subcultures and the stigmatization of lower status classes in these schools. And also the teachers had a very strong nostalgia for remedial education tracks where they used to stream problem Roma students as well. So, for example, in one of the case study schools applied the subtle selection at the point of school enrollment by offering choice for the parents between full day and half day classes. And but the latter, the half-day classes with the latter, they offered 3 free meals and free study equipment. So naturally, the lower status parents chose half-day classes, and the working parents and the majority parents chose full-day classes, and therefore an internal segregation developed in the school. And also in this school offered a wide range of free-paying after-school activities, which resulted or a segregation based on financial possibilities in the after-school programs as well. But we also see that with the above-mentioned transitionary forces, streaming practices have become less sustainable for these schools, and they were actually at the point of changing their school structures and finding ways and pedagogical approaches to teach more mixed classes. So it was very important to notice that they are actually at a point of transition here. But for now, we found in our interviews and in our case studies a strong correlation between teacher narratives on student resilience and how the schools were organized. In the schools which applied a streaming practice, the stories of resilient Roma educational trajectories were basically narrated as singularities and exceptions. The teachers often explain that yes, there is this one student which actually entered the higher status streams, but the rest is so, but his family is so and so. At the same time, when we went to schools which were not streaming and had a more integrated, inclusive environment, we found that they had a more strategic approach towards educational mobility and the stories of Roma resilience were narrated in the framework of talent education, institutional support for parents in secondary school choice, and in the students' application. So we found that the schools had actually acknowledged their agency in supporting student mobility. I'm sorry, I'm trying to move on. So we should also mention that the wider policy context in Hungary is that there is a lack of symbolic and financial acknowledgement for teachers in disadvantaged schools. And also, when we went to schools, that we found that even though we knew that they have an added value, they are actually overperforming the similar schools. They weren't aware of it. So these sort of indicators for resilience were not a source of positive identity in the school. And we found that in terms of resilience and in terms of the self-agency of the school, it was vital that the schools have a coherent institutional narrative which puts their work into context. And I will bring two examples for this. One of the schools had a very strong identity around innovation and the narrative of professionalism. So they viewed their work with disadvantaged students as a professional challenge. They were very much interested in applying for tenders, and in every year they brought in new methodologies and tenders, and which put also an excessive weight on teachers, and they also positioned the school within a national space of knowledge sharing and institutional development, which gave their work recognition and authority. And they positioned themselves a center of knowledge dissemination. And this role actually gave a positive identity for the teachers. In another school, we found that there was a very strong sense of being a village school. So many of the teachers explained that they have a mission in teaching, and they chose the teaching profession because of a sense of local solidarity and because their career goal was to teach disadvantaged children. So they argued that they would actually feel uncomfortable in a more elite or higher status school. In the rest of the presentation, I would like to talk about a little bit how students, how the schools perceive the Roma identity and how they perceive their tasks in relation to student diversity. In the 8 schools we studied, we found the dominance of assimilationist expectations. Often the cultivation of Roma identity was narrated as an opposing force to Hungarian citizenship. So, for example, in a case of a school which was located in a village with a very traditional Roma community, which actually spoke the Romani language, Roma and multicultural programs were only offered as after-school activities because the white parents strictly demanded that these activities should not be included in the compulsory curriculum. And in this school, Romani language was actually not perceived as a pedagogical asset or even a proper language. Bilingualism was a tolerated practice, which was not considered as foundations for any pedagogical intervention, but rather as a disadvantage. In other cases, we found that where the Roma community didn't speak Romani language, Roma identity was considered as a low status or even a truncated identity, and teachers often argued that since families and since they thought that families and students were themselves shameful of their identity, the school has nothing to do with it. They shouldn't discuss this. There were 2 schools where Roma cultural education was actually part of the school curriculum, but Roma culture was mostly tackled through cultural aspects of tales, myths, celebration, dance, classical professions, food, and other traditions, as something which belongs to the past as a heritage. So we found that schools do not have a language to address the challenge of interethnic education and often the conflicts around interethnic education, and neither the everyday realities of tensions of Roma identity, and they do not really consider student diversity as a resource for pedagogies. So all in all, in the majority of the schools, we found on the teacher side fixed, stable ideas about the inherent abilities of students, and very essentialist arguments on family determinations and what is Roma culture, in fact. And in very few occasions we encountered signs for thinking about the abilities as a process and thinking about the potentials of children as a subject of pedagogy. One interesting case which was more closer to this perspective on education was a school where the Roma intake was around 50%, but they didn't really address Roma inclusion or Roma integration as a pedagogic task. Instead, they had two other goals. On the one hand, they were very much concentrated pedagogical practices of special education needs, inclusion, and in creating an inclusive environment for special education needs students. And alongside that, they had cooperative education practices in almost all lessons. And we found that this strong impact of special pedagogies actually had trickle-down effects on all practices of schools, and helped the school teachers to focus on the individual abilities and potentials of the students. At the same time, this school was also very active in teaching Boyars language and culture. They were working with resources based on research with the local communities. So altogether, what we found is that cooperative methods and the teaching methods of special education together created an environment in these schools where teachers were focusing on students' potential and what they could become instead of a fixed and stable mindset about teachers. about student abilities and potentials. And I will just quickly conclude because our time is up, I think. So one of the important lessons of our qualitative inquiry is that we really have to think about the agency, the constraints and the structural constraints around schools, and only then we can talk about the agency of schools in supporting social mobility. Resilient schools not only need to tackle education inequalities, but they navigate in a wider social and institutional context that generates profound social tensions. And we didn't really found cases when conflict-ridden of resilient schools in conflictual and conflict-ridden communities where ethnic conflicts were very fierce. Schools couldn't really implement programs which would enhance structural mobility. And based on the qualitative inquiry, we would also suggest expanding the notion of resilience and moving beyond quantitative indicators. And also expanding the quantitative indicators. So one of the important findings of our research was that apart from the performance on the competence assessment, the indicator of secondary school pathways and the extent to which students went to academic paths is also a very strong indicator of the work of the schools. And so in terms of looking at the agency of the schools and the sources of resilience in an institutional level, it seemed to be vital that the school would break away from the quality framework of teaching, from trying to teach from this meritocratic ideal of teaching high quality academic knowledge, and instead it seemed very important that the school and the school ethos would find value in the professional work with disadvantaged learners. Apart from that, we saw that apart from indicators, we should take into account indicators such as teachers and the school climate, and in this, the coherent school identity around teaching disadvantaged schools is a very important factor. And in terms of student resilience, we found that it was a decisive difference whether the school perceived Roma successful educational stories in Roma for Roma as against the odds phenomenon, or something that in which they have agency and in which they can apply a strategic institutionalized support for everyone in various forms of institutionalized programs. And finally, we found that schools, there is a lack of language for schools to discuss the experience of integrated education in the schools and the challenge of majority-minority relations and conflicts. And also there is a lack of acknowledgement for the social and emotional weight for educational mobility on Roma students. And just as a final...
Excuse me to interrupt. Pranvera, mun ta mbyllësh mikrofonin, lutem? Pranvera. Margit, could you please, can you comment?
Sent a message, but I don't think it helped.
Yeah. No, it didn't.
I think that the host can mute him.
Yeah, if the host can mute
her. Host can mute her.
Yeah, the host.
Anyway, finishing up with the final thoughts that actually the coronavirus pandemic is a textbook case or a laboratory for resilience and the school's potential for adaptation and adaptation to social change. So it will be very interesting to look at how these case study schools tackle the challenges of pandemic education. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Esther, for this Very, very interesting presentation. I'd like to ask you in the most democratic way, what is the best, what would be the best way to do it? Whether to ask questions now, to open the floor for questions, probably this would make more sense. And after this, to listen to the presentations about related projects, ongoing projects. What do you think?
I think there is space for a few questions.
Yeah,
so
I think it is now. It is fresh, and we all have the chance. I saw in the chat that some people already have comments, remarks, and I would like to ask you to write in the chat your questions, and then Milan is going to read it. Okay, probably this will be the best. The best.
I see that Attila unfortunately had to leave for a class. So.
I think you can make it instead of him.
Okay.
Based on what we had from you, I mean, I'm sure, and it was like, for me, I mean, I just would like to give you 2 minutes to write your messages in the chat, but it is really an incredibly valuable research what you have done, especially under conditions which are not really, like political and social conditions which are not really favorable for any kind of flexibility in school system. So your results show that there is a need for changing the whole concept or conceptual approach to the problem. And well, my research in different other countries proved more or less the same. Well, not this kind, but just a field research, and not this kind of qualitative, quantitative, like very methodologically very well backed research. So let's go to the questions. Milan, may I ask to read them, or I should, because probably this was the agreement that you will be the.
I can see actually.
Oh, you can see them. Yes, sure.
There is a question about publication. So far we have an interim publication in Hungarian, and soon we will also come up with a series of public section in a journal in Hungarian as well. And we are at the point now to work on international publications. But if you drop me an email, I'm very happy to send what we have so far and give you a nudge when something come out and send you the papers. So we are actually at the end of the project now, and we are working on publications. Thank you.
More questions, comments?
Can I ask a question?
Oh, sorry.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, I do.
So maybe there was already, or you have already talked about, but can I ask what was the criteria of choosing these institutions?
Yes, I think it was sort of hidden in Attila's presentation. So we have a national assessment carried out in each year with 6 and 8 years, with the 6 and 8 graders, national assessment of competencies, and within the results of these, we looked at the assessment results, and we selected those schools which have a Gypsy Roma intake, and which had an added value in comparison to the other schools which have a similar intake. But we also wanted it to have not just a 1 year exceptional effect, but a continuous effect. So we selected schools which had added value, significant added value for 3 consecutive years. And there were actually very few of these schools across the country. So we selected 4 of these schools across the country, and we selected a pair for each school within the same region, which had the same size, ethnic intake. Basically, these were the most important characteristics, but didn't have an added value or an exceptional result, because we wanted to compare within the local society as well, to have a comparison between average or ordinary schools and exceptionally successful or effective schools.
And can I ask, I've seen on the map that there was a school in Baranya.
2 schools, yes.
And can I ask which were them? Maybe I'm not.
I will write you in the chat, because we promised anonymity to the school. So
Sorry. Okay.
Okay, so one more question from Andreas Hadjar.
Discipline. I think that's something that Attila could respond much better, because he looked at these indicators. So if it's not a problem, I would suggest to write an email to him, and I'm confident that he will reply. Because in this national assessment, the schools had to respond to an institutional question, and there were some questions about disciplinary practices, but I don't know the details of those.
Okay, one message. Okay, so shall we go on? All right. So now I would like to ask Mr. Béla Cardon, who is the manager of one of the partner organizations, to introduce briefly our project and say some words about the recent developments. And thank you very much, Esther. I hope you will stay with us.
Thank you for the questions.
So hello everyone. Now it's my turn. I will speak about the project we are running. Share my screen. Okay, this does not work that good. Then I will go to the, just a minute. I will move to the, I will stop now the sharing and share again the PowerPoint presentation, okay. Now, okay, now you should see my full screen. Sometimes it does not work with PDF. I like PDF because it's less digital content to transfer. Sometimes it's easier, but okay.
Yes, we see it very well.
If not, then we can do it the usual PowerPoint way. Under the topic, enhancing access and uptake of education to reverse inequalities, financed by the Research and Innovation Framework Program of the European Union, 3 projects are funded now, 2 research and innovation actions, and 1 coordination and support action. This is our project, the Inclusion for Schools project. What about is our project? It's about school community partnership for reversing inequality and exclusion. we will work on transformative practices of segregated schools. Shortly about the mission of our project. I would like to summarize the most important missions, then it's community building. It's about cooperation, to enhance the cooperation between the different actors, starting from researchers, going to teachers, to different representatives of civil society organizations, policymakers, etc. And of course, we try to interact with, in first stage, with the 2 parallel running projects financed by the European Commission, but with any other project running in let's say, comparable topics. And of course, we try to generate networks for research and policy development. Further missions of our project are the identification of social inequalities and to narrow down them. We would like to contribute to the strengthening of social integrity and solidarity. We like to enhance inclusive pedagogy in public education. Of course, we try to give some support to segregated institutions. But very important is we try to contribute to this very long procedure, how to break down the walls of exclusion, and try to coordinate all kinds of pioneering activities in this field. Very shortly about the consortium, we are 6 members in the consortium, 3 from Hungary, 1 from Slovakia, 1 from Bulgaria, and 1 from Albania. The coordinator of our project is the John Wesley Theological College. The second Hungarian participant are we, the Regional Center for Information and Scientific Development. The third Hungarian organization participating in this project is the Autonom Charity Society. Our Bulgarian partner is the CEGA Foundation. The Slovak partner is the Shey University. And our Albanian partner is the Albanian National Orphan Association. Our project duration is 4 years. We started in November 2020, and the project will last at least until October 2024. What kind of activities we have? I listed 6 main activities of our project and with some sub-activities. The first activity is mapping, analysis and evaluation. We will prepare policy peer mix review about these transformative practices. We will, of course, map the impact of this analysis among the main stakeholders. And this third is very important. We will organize meetings and we will collaborate with ongoing projects. But if you are ready, not only with ongoing projects, even with projects which are already terminated, but are in a I would say, post-project phase, where they try where we are already in this kind of sustainability phase. So we are open to any kind of cooperation. I will come back later to this cooperation, what ideas we here have and how we can cooperate. The second main activity is about EU research standards. Here's again a topic where we count on cooperation with partners outside of our cooperation of our project. It's the coordination of data, of debates, and accessibility of relevant data. We will organize small think tank workshops online, but even with personal attendance in countries outside of the consortium, of course in the countries of our consortium and outside of our consortium, about this topic, and hopefully we can meet you and discuss this challenge with you. After these workshops, we will prepare recommendations for national data services, and we will support the public discussion on this topic. The third main activity is the support for community-centered approaches. We will give support for community building actions. We started already establish school community networks, and of course we will support these partnerships. The first activity is about evaluation and exchange of transformative practices. We will support the professional self-evaluation in these very special situated segregated schools. Of course, we will help to exchange these transformative community-centered practices. We will evaluate and try develop the teacher education curricula. And again, a point where we count on cooperation with further projects is clustering with existing programs and initiatives. Here I speak not only about projects, but furthermore with programs which support projects and initiatives what are still not in the project phase, but I would say in the pre-project phase. We have a topic in R&D methodology. We will here promote intersectional, comparative, and multidisciplinary approaches. And of course, we have a very strong collaboration with the two other projects funded by Horizon 2020, the European Framework Program for Research and Innovation. Communication and dissemination activities are very important. This is the sixth activity in our project in such a coordinating and support action. We do this mainly on social media. This means Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram. Please visit our sites. Of course, we have some offline materials what we take with us if we organize meetings with personal attendance. And I would underline the importance of offline materials if we go to our clients, to the target audience, to segregated schools, and to those who have, for example, their children in such schools. Sometimes it's good if you can give them a leaflet and not only give a web page. And we will have altogether 120 events. This is maybe the fifth or the sixth already. Shortly about the events, because we count on your cooperation on the event, or we would be very happy to host you on our different events. I listed here the events and will not read about all of them. Maybe the events where we count most on your cooperation is meeting between different projects. On the first hand, this is the research and innovation actions, but if there are other projects and initiatives which would like to join, you are highly welcome. Then we will have some small events, this small workshop for, let's say, not more than a dozen people of the cross-sector think tanks. We plan to have 4 in the countries of the consortium, 4 online, but 4 outside of the consortium. And here we count on your contribution to organize such events. You have to know we have the resources for this. So if there are partners who would be happy to host such an event and to initiate such a discussion, we would gladly come, and we can pay for the room and pay for the catering, not a big sum, but we can do this, and we would be very happy to do this. Important is that we have some connecting points where we can connect an interesting audience, those not more than 10 experts who will be ready to discuss these questions. Then the target is here, I would say, coming from academia, coming from policymaker, and of course representatives of social social organizations, NGOs, different partners who represent the real society. We plan to organize awareness-raising events in our countries and outside of our countries to bring it closer to the general public, what we are doing. This would be bigger events, I would say, with rather around 100 participants. Here again, we have the resources for it. So if you see possibilities that you would host such an event or organize such an event back to back with another event, we can come. We have the resources for catering, for room meeting, etc., for inviting the partners and addressing the most important partners. And we will have international conferences. 3 are planned. In Hungary, you are highly welcome to these conferences. What's the work performed till now? We are almost at the end of the first year, but I would say at the very beginning of the project, less than 20% happened. All the communication tools are available and in use. We have conducted many partner projects, altogether 36, and we are very happy that we have response from 9 and 4 are pending. Hopefully we will have 10, 12 partner projects where we can cooperate. And we are very good already in the assessment, the extent of the characteristics of segregated schools. We developed already before the summer the questionnaires. We contacted the schools, and many schools were contacted. So hundreds of schools in each country, and let's say dozens or we'll select 10 to 20 schools for closer cooperation after this contact and the online questionnaire, where we see that there's a possibility that in a very special type of two-way communication we can work together and develop the agenda what we're working on. But of course, all the other schools we ever contacted, and even further schools who are ready to join, will be offered to participate in various online services to learn and share content experiences. So the schools not contacted, it's important, they are not excluded, but of course we don't have the resources, neither the human nor the financial resources, to work with, let's say, with hundreds of schools in each of our countries. What do we mean when we speak about the assessment of the extent of the characteristics of segregation in schools? We visited already these 15, 20 schools in each country. The country reports on the education system is in our countries is now ongoing. We will the analysis of the major funded EU project is another activity. What is now very good developing. Of course, this is again in our 4 countries, and we will go back to the last 10 years. What happened here? We will, of course, consider all the aspects and methods for the analysis of these innovative practices about segregated schools. The mapping of schools happened already partly, and it is partly ongoing. Here we deal with families living in disadvantaged areas where they face the challenge of deep poverty. As I mentioned, we contacted already schools affected by territorial and or social segregation, and we already contacted many NGOs, but this is again an ongoing, maybe never-ending procedure, because there will be again and again new partners, civil society organizations who are interested in our work, and so in this way we hope we can combat social disadvantage and inequality. Work in progress. We are elaborating now the state-of-art studies in our 4 countries to monitor the education system. We elaborate the methodology for the validation of good practices, and we are working now on this concept note of the think tanks I mentioned, where we will work in our countries and outside of the countries of the consortium about the accessibility of the relevant data. What challenges we face in our project? The challenges we face are on 3 levels. First, on project level, it's for some of our partners, it's the first time they are participating in the Horizon 2020 project, and from my point of view, it's a very easy administration, but for those who never did it, it's not always that easy. The second challenge is how we cooperate with external partners who did not plan at the very beginning to have resources for this cooperation, and how can we enhance the cooperation. And of course, we face different global challenges which influences our work, and we cannot influence them like the pandemic crisis I mentioned here at last, or political systems etc., etc. Very important is that we try to put the European citizen into focus, especially those citizens who are very disadvantaged. To do this, we have to speak the language of the clients, and it's not always easy for those who are really high educated to go those who are who are the most disadvantaged citizens in our countries. And of course, to face these challenges, we need flexible adaptations. But as you can read on our logo, our words are smart, flexible, innovative. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Béla. I think now all of us know everything about our activities, because I'm also a member of this team, and there were so many things which were new even for me. So it is really quite large scope of activities we are doing. And now I would like to ask Andreas Hajar, who is a representative of another related project, to introduce the pioneered project and tell us some words about their activities in the past years.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I hope that you can see the slide presentation and also can hear my voice. And yeah, I'm the representative and coordinator of the Pioneered project. Pioneered stands for Pioneering Policies and Practices Tackling Educational Inequalities in Europe. And when we talk about pioneered, then this is something that means that this should be something really new, something that, on the other hand, also can be shown to be effective and also to be different from what was done before. And of course, when talking about pioneered or pioneering, we have to keep in mind that some things might be very pioneering. For example, in Luxembourg, Germany, or Austria, with these very inequality-prone education systems, while, for example, for Finland, certain practices are not at all pioneering because Finland does these practices since a long period. That's why, of course, it's always interesting to also reflect on these issues. So, just a brief introduction. And I hope that you will be able to see the project features now. Oh, sorry, this was too fast. This is really, our focus is on educational inequalities. And when we define educational inequalities, then this is very much about systematic advantages or disadvantages in access to and uptake of education. And these disadvantages or advantages are related to certain individual characteristics, but of course we need to keep in mind, as you already showed also in the keynote presentation, that it's not about the individual characteristics, but that the causes lie much further beyond. But when we talk about such inequalities, we think first about certain axes of inequality that include social background, gender, disability, or immigration history. But of course, there's much more of these different axes, and there is also intersectionalities we have to look at, so that we look, for example, at working class boys in school or certain working class immigrant groups that may be particularly disadvantaged. And I think you already showed a very good and informative example for Hungary. The overarching goals of the project include to determine, research, and form policy measures and identify pioneering policies and practices to enhance access to education, uptake. So this is also about learning, how to facilitate learning, and also completion of education. And of course, this is all about mitigating educational inequalities. We will identify, or would like to identify, pioneering policies and practices. So these are, as I said, innovative and empirically effective to tackle educational inequalities. And we will take into account the diversity of inequalities, so that there's different inequalities in different countries with a linkage to different stages within the educational career. So inequalities, mechanism behind inequalities may be different for primary school than for higher education, different for formal education than for informal education or non-formal education. So that is what happens in the schools or also in daycare facilities. We will have an integrative methodological framework, so that's centering on the life course focused perspective. That's why we look at these different stages of the educational career, and also noting that there is path dependency. So what happens in primary school is most crucial for the uptake of education during secondary school, or also to the question of if people will attend tertiary education or not, and how they will go through tertiary education. That's why it's also we are interested in a period of time from childhood to young adulthood. We consider a multi-level framework. So for my keynote speech, I already introduced some interesting levels we have to look at from our sociological perspective. And I really appreciate that there are so many sociologists also in the project. We, of course, are interested in three levels in particular. First is, of course, the macro level. So that's the societal level where the educational and social policies are situated. Not only on the country level, this is also about sub-levels such the regions or the local level. Then it's about the meso level, and that's about social institutions. So the school as a social institution, and certain might tap on questions like what are the transition procedures, how they are enacted in the schools, what are kind of teaching practices that are implemented on the school level, so if there's certain school characteristics. And of course, we are also focused on the micro level, and that's the level also of where certain decisions are taken, where certain behavior is shown. And this not only focuses on students, but also on the teachers, teaching practices, on parents, their support. So that's about family resources and also attitudes towards education. So that's just the global project features. So how does the project in fact looks like? So this is the work packages of the project, and there's 8 work packages. The first, or the more administrative work packages, that's of course the project management work package that is led by the University of Luxembourg as the coordinator. This is really to facilitate working together and to get the project started. Work package 7, that's the communication, dissemination, and stakeholder engagement work package. Here, of course, this is done by URAS, an agency situated in the German Bundesland of the Saarland. And there we have certain collaborators. We also have a website already, so you are also invited to check this out, pioneer.eu. And of course, we will also work together with the projects that are gathered here for this very interesting public, and yesterday it was the methodological work. So, of course, then we also have an ethics work package where we try to really monitor our ethical, or what we do in our research from an ethical and data protection perspective. Now coming to the more scientific work package, and these are the blue work package in the center of this depiction. There's on the one hand work package 2, which is kind of introductory work package, And this is dealing with the question this will outline and produce and create the conceptual and methodological framework. And as I said, regarding the methodological framework, for us it's very important to have a longitudinal life course perspective, to look at different levels, so to do this multi-level research, and to also feature intersectionalities, meaning that we not only consider working class as one category, but look at differences between girls and boys within the working class, and also people with certain income. So that's the work package 2. Then this will feed into the 3 empirical work packages, and the 3 empirical work packages, they follow 3 different methodological traditions. Work package 3, that is done by our, or coordinated by our Lithuanian partners, that's about, it's about the policy analysis. There we will analyze policies in the different countries, but also beyond, regarding the measures of tackling educational inequalities. And this is also about certain research that already had been done to evaluate these policies. Work package 4, that's it's a quantitative analysis, and this is about a comparison of the different countries with regard to educational inequalities. We will follow our MILK approach. So I just introduced MILK. Is also it's multi-level, it's intersectionalities, it's life course. These all combined, so we will do analysis on the base of existing data sets, and that will allow us to identify certain mechanisms. On the one hand, certain inequalities or disadvantaged intersectionalities. So maybe we found out for some country that it's really about immigrant boys with a working class background that have the lowest opportunities in the educational system, and for other countries this might be other aspects. We know, for example, that in certain countries immigrants are not as disadvantaged than in other countries because that it's more about elite integration, and of course it's also about minorities. And this, on the other hand, we will also look into certain mechanisms behind this. So is it the teaching practices? Is it certain school or classroom level variables? Is it, what about composition, student composition? So this is all, kind of issue in the work package 4. And work package 5, that's a work package that centers on pioneering practices in particular, and has a practice research approach. And this will consider both formal and informal education, so both education inside the school but also outside the school. And what we'll do here, we will, in the different countries, identify certain practices that are very much, certain practices in school that are really pioneering, so like pilot practices. So, for example, very integrative, inclusive school projects, but also will move beyond outside the school, so daycare activities or certain collaborations between parental networks in schools that might really be pioneering practices. So, work package 5 will center in a way on ethnographic research, going to the schools, and as I said, the other institutions, doing interviews. And then we'll have this work package 6 that is a kind of synthesis work package that brings all the findings together, that integrates the findings regarding the different levels, the different educational stages, and the different countries. And there, the major task is to really select the most promising pioneering policies and practices, and also to identify which of these pioneering policies and practices can be really kind of role models for other countries and rather function rather universal, and which of those practices and policies are rather specific, so that they might help to solve certain or to tackle educational inequalities regarding a certain axis of inequalities, but might not be the right thing for others. So, for example, in our research, we very much learned that the motivation is not a problem of immigrants. Immigrants very often lack certain resources. By motivation, that's an issue we very much have to talk about native students of working class background. So, for example, in Luxembourg, in Switzerland, and Germany, where they did research, we find that immigrants are highly motivated but lack resources, while working class students of German or Luxembourgish or Swiss origin have a really a large problem with motivation and also show much higher levels of school alienation. But it's just to give you some idea what this is all about. Okay, now I come to the question of who is involved in the project, and I hope that the slide will change soon, because I just put this, hope that because it doesn't react anymore currently. Oh, so sorry for that. So I will briefly bring you the partners now in a bit of another format. So that's the partners of our RIA project, and this is about the University of Luxembourg as coordinating institution. It's also about, in an alphabetical order, about Finland. There it's the University of Helsinki that collaborates in the project. In Germany, we have 3 partners. That's on the one hand, the RIAs agency that was very helpful, or is still very helpful in managing the entire project. Then the University of Mannheim and the University of Trier. And while the University of Mannheim does rather quantitative research, the University of Trier does rather qualitative research, also in early childhood and institutions. In Hungary, and that's, I think, an important linkage between our 2 projects, because Hungary is part of both projects, so Inclusions for Schools and the Pioneer. In Hungary, our partner is the Taki Institute, and later we will have a very brief input on the role of the Taki Institute and about the Taki Institute, so that you can get to know them, because if this would have been in person, then of course our colleagues from Hungary would be the most important people also at your at this public gathering. Then in Ireland, it's the Economic and Social Research Institute Dublin, the ESRI, that's part of our project. In Lithuania, it's the PPMI group who does policy analysis. As I said, in Luxembourg, it's the University of Luxembourg as the coordinator, but also the Luxembourg Institute for Socio-Economic Research, the LISA, who collaborates. Then we have rather low and not lowly stratified countries with different education systems. So Norway and Finland are these lowly stratified countries. And in Norway, we have also 2 partners at the University of Bergen and the Western Norway University of Applied Sciences. In Spain, it's the Universidad Complutense de Madrid, and in Switzerland, it's the University of Bern. So that's the partners. You see that there's several countries from east and west, from north and south are gathered, and also represent different education systems. And while I'm running out of time, I would now briefly ask Robana Löwensch if she could briefly introduce the Taki Institute to you, so that you will also learn about, particularly about the Hungarian partner within our research consortium.
Yes, hello. Can you hear me? Yeah, thank you, Andreas. Would it be possible for me to share the screen, or is it too much? I can also just sum it up because I'll be pretty quick.
but I just left the share screen thing. So if you would like, you could also share the screen now.
Yeah. Now you can see it, right? Okay. Okay, so I'll just say a few words. I think many of you know Turkey already, so I will not spend too much time with introducing Turkey, and of course you can find a lot of information on it online if you don't know it. But I will just sum up very quickly what we do in the Pioneer project. Of course, we participate in the work packages 1, 7, and 8, which are general, and we are just finishing the contribution to work package 1. We also produced a mini report on the Hungarian state of literature on educational inequalities. It was very interesting for me to listen to the presentation at the beginning because we also mostly covered the situation of low SES and Roma students in the Hungarian system, and also dealt a lot with school climate and teachers' perceptions and teacher training and so on. And at the moment, the summary of these country mini reports is being produced, so we contributed to that. In the next work package, in work package 3, we will take part in the recontextualization of the policy analysis results, and also in the and report and working paper production. But our most important contribution will be in work package 4. Which, as Andreas described, is going to deal with the secondary analysis of already existing data on education inequalities, and we are going to be the task leaders of task 4.5, producing the public report on the results of the whole work package. And also in work package 5, mapping and pioneering practices in formal and informal education, we are going to participate in all the tasks, which I think is going to be a very exciting project, but it's still a bit far ahead. and also we're going to participate in work package 6 in summing up the results of the 3rd, 4th, and 5th work package. And this is just a very short introduction of my colleagues who participate in the project. So it's 7 people working and pioneered from Turkish side. I'm coordinating our participation, but I also have some senior researcher colleagues who are supporting my work in all the work packages and with the research and methodologies. And of course, we have our international project coordinator helping with the work packages 1 and 7. So that's us. And of course, I'm very happy to answer any further questions of anyone if they might come up, but I will stick to the short version for now to save time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Barbara and Andreas. I think we are almost on time. So let's collect the questions after the 3rd presentation, okay? Let's talk about more concrete issues if we are done with when we are done with all 3 presentations. So thanks for introducing this really pioneering initiative, and now I would like to ask Ioannis Bechteridis from Thessaly to talk about a smooth project, another initiative related to our efforts in our inclusion project. Okay, so Ioannis, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you. Hello there. Thank you very much for the invitation. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thanks. And thanks for the invitation. It's very nice to see you all, even online. So I'm going to share my screen right now. Okay, I think so. Okay, nice. And here is the Smooth project. In this first slide, you can see the official title of our project, Educational Smooth Spaces Passing Through Enclosures and Reversing Inequalities. We started 6 months ago, and I'm going to share this presentation with my close associate, Ioannis Kozaris. So I will start by saying a few words about the general idea, the ambition, the aims of this project, okay, and the work packages. So I'm starting with the general idea of the Smooth project. It's a 3-year project, and in this project we intend to introduce the paradigm of the commons in the field of education, especially for children and young people at risk. And we want to address active social inclusion for them, following this alternative logic and ethics of the educational commons. The commons, very shortly, can say that it's an alternative value and action social system. And in the third bullet, you can see the main research question of our project. So we want, our basic aim is to study, to explore if the commons can operate as a catalyst for reversing inequalities through a mixture of quantitative and qualitative methods. I move on, and about now we can talk about the ambition of this project. Our ambition is to develop an innovative framework to help the European educational systems to reverse inequalities and fulfill the needs of groups at risk of social exclusion. Also to provide a comprehensive analysis and practical educational insights on innovative methods in education for active social inclusion of children and young people at risk, as I said before, and bring the voice of children and youth more strongly into policy making, and to assist collaboration, networking, and mobility of researchers, experts, etc. In other words, we can say that the Smooth project is expected to have both short and long-term impacts regarding the efficiency of educational commons among groups of children and youth in serious risk of social exclusion, and the strengthening of sustainability and resilience of free and fair societies. Now, a few words about the work plan. The work plan is organized around 10 work packages. We have already done the first package. The first work package is about the theoretical framework of our project. We try to outline our theoretical view, our theoretical orientation, theoretical expectations, and we have built this theoretical framework around the concepts of educational commons, peer-to-peer learning, peer-to-peer governance, childhood and youth, pedagogical documentation, project work, social inclusion, non-formal education, etc. And our intention was to create an interdisciplinary framework for a different and alternative understanding of the educational realities. The next package, number 2, in this second package, we will try to map the adult participant views, parents, educators, teachers. We want to map their views about the role of educational commons in reversing and tackling inequalities and achieving active social inclusion. This second package actually consists of three main tasks. The first and the second task concern the quantitative measurement of the views of the adults who are involved in the study. And we want to repeat this, we will do it in the beginning now, actually, of the project, and then later at the end. We will go back to them and ask them again about educational commons, the experiences, etc. And the last task, the third task of this package is about the examination of how teachers, educators and parents, again adults, discursively construct their experience of the educational commons through the qualitative methodology of autobiographical reflection. And in short, through quantitative survey and autobiographical reflection, we try to identify any possible shifts in adult participants' perspectives about education, commons, and social inclusion. I move on now to the third package. This third package has two parts. The first part is about the training of the staff, of researchers, teachers, educators, and the second part is about the designing of the specific case studies which lie at the heart of the next package. So we have built a program about training courses on commons, educational commons, peer-to-peer learning, peer-to-peer governance, inequalities, children's rights, etc. Digital citizenship. And this package, fourth package, lies at the heart of our project, the SMOOTH project, and is totally dedicated, as I write in this slide, in the implementation of a variety of case studies designed following the educational commons logic. Our intention is to conduct action research. So on the one hand, we are going to implement several variety of educational scenarios following according to the commons logic. And on the other hand, we want to study the implementation of these pedagogical scenarios through a variety of methods such as pedagogical documentation, see for example Reggio Emilia, and ethnography, etc. And this package lasts 1 year and a half, and we will have estimated approximately 50 case studies in preschool, schools, and after-school programs. And the next two packages, package 5 and package 6, in these two packages, we are going to analyze the material, the empirical material from the previous package, number 4, through both qualitative and quantitative methodologies. And number 7, the package is very important. It's about policy. Here we have our tasks. Our task is, the first task is about the gathering of official documents on education, on the role of education in tackling inequalities, about how official documents, European official documents, national official documents, how represent education, how represent inequalities, how represent childhood and youth, all these things. And then the next task of this package is to conduct several interviews with experts, policymakers, and then in the third task we are going to compare the official documents, representations with the sayings of the policymakers. And this package number 8 is about the dissemination, which carried out throughout the entire project, has already started from the beginning of the project. And okay, and package number 9 is about management. Ioannis Kozaris is going to say more about this package, about the coordination, the management, quality control, etc. And the last work package is about the ethics requirements, and that we must, all partners, comply with. And I think it's enough for now, and I'm going to stop my presentation and give the screen to my associates. Just a minute.
Do you want
You can do like if somebody is muting the microphone and the volume. Put the volume down in the other laptop.
So if you are in one room, then only one laptop can have a microphone and speaker.
We cannot yet hear you, sorry.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now it works.
Sure, it's perfect now.
Now it's okay, perfect.
Sorry for the inconvenience. Well, I will make a short description of the project in terms of the research process that we are going to follow. First of all, let me make an introduction for our project. We are speaking about 12 partners and 24 third parties that are collaborating in this research process. And of course, we have an intervention of in total 36 months and 54 case studies. Well, just to give you the project timeline, we have started already with the review and the conceptual roots about the educational commons. We did a collection and analysis of official documents, and now we are to the step of interview the policymakers, and we are moving to the following months to the training and the arrangement of the case studies. And at the same time, we have prepared a quality survey about the educational commons and the opinion of the stakeholders. We also, in November, we will definitely design the case studies, and we are going to the implementation in the next coming February, with the research, the head of the research process are starting February with the pedagogical documentation, peer-to-peer interviews, survey children's view on certain actions designed for each case study. We have also experimenting with games. We have the second quantitative survey around the third month of the project. Yes, and we have also finally at the end we are planning to make the analysis of the data, to draw our conclusions, and to proceed to the comparison of the empirical findings, the synthesis of the best practices and the policy recommendations, And of course, we have finally the self-reflection for future research. Of course, we have a plan of intense dissemination during the whole project of our activities. And the research scheme are based on the following diagram, which each case study will be designed, implemented. The research will follow and investigate the implementation, and then following a discussion about the results at the final end. Well, the case studies structures, as I said, is not only based on the partners. Each partner should contract it with at least 2 third parties, and each third party they will create 2 case studies in different time period. We believe the first case study will run in February 2022, and the second case study will run the same period, February 2023. In between, we will have a long discussion about the first results, and to make also the necessary modifications, arrangement for the second slot of 10 case studies, in order to, let's say, to avoid any problems or difficulties during the research process. We are trying to intervene for not a short, but as far as we can, a relative long period, around 14 to 16 weeks interventions, and we will try to investigate in this period the attitude of the students, the parents, the teachers about the implementation of education based on educational commons, and this is the reason that we are propose 2 cycles of research. Well, the educational commons, we based on educational commons, and the stakeholders are, of course, the students and the educators, the researchers, and we have also a reference group with interconnect, let's say, the different case studies in order to have a unique approach in all 52 case studies. So we give also to our partners, and we discuss with them a typical research month, let's say, that are in each week there are different activities such as preparation, the implementation, meeting with a reference group, and this continue at least for 2 weeks for each month. More or less, this is the structure of our research proposal, and we will, we are, let's say, are very keen to work with the dissemination of our results at the end of the first period of the case studies, in which we will have a long discussion not only with the partners of the project, but also with all the people, the researchers that are interested in the inclusion strategies in order to create, let's say, an impact to this field. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ioannis, and I think this is really an exciting initiative for me, mostly because it is very much fieldwork based, and so it is like it really is promising in sense that all these results will be very useful for policy proposals. I hope so, at least. And now I'd like to announce that the coffee break is over, so we can go on with the. No, okay, I'm kidding.